Is a study of Isaiah chapter 13. This chapter predicts something that was in the future for Isaiah, but is now history for us. And he also predicts into the end times. Babylon, remember, is symbolic of confusion. And we do know that in 539 BC that the king of Babylon carried away the house of Judah. A Syrian king had 200 years earlier taken the 10 tribes, and as we learned in an earlier chapter, Sennacherib had tried to take Jerusalem, but God didn't allow that. When he woke with the morning, when he was a half day's march out, he discovered that 186,000 of his soldiers were lying dead, and thus thwarted he turned about and went back to Nineveh. Chapter 13, verse 1. The burden of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amoz did see, lift up to a banner upon the high mountain, exalt the voice unto them, and shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. Now, who is that banner, that ensign that sits up on the high mountain, Mount Zion? That is none other than the Christ when he comes in the second advent. Verse 3, I have commanded my sanctified ones. I have also called my mighty ones for mine anger, even them that rejoice in my highness. And we learned in that beautiful little chapter before this one that God is always in control. Now, these sanctified is a set aside. These are the elect. Those who are elect, the symbolic number 7,000, are those persons who stood against Satan in that first rebellion and will stand against him when he tries to pretend to be the Christ. Also, let me point out that the Babylonian captivity lasted 70 years. And that's a probationary time, a generational time. And who took them back and helped build the temple? None other than Cyrus, the king himself. And of course, he is one of those persons who was named before he was born, and he was used as an instrument of God. And we must always remember that God is always in control, and some things are anything that happens is let to happen, and a lot did happen to these people who went into the promised land, and most of what happened to them happened because they took up with false gods and they went wrong and erred in their ways and failed to keep their covenant. Number 4. The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of battle. And this is Revelation 13, if you care to do a side study, and futuristic. 5. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord, and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. Babylon, Babel, and confusion. And God is not the author of confusion. that Satan is the author of confusion and babble. 6. How are ye? For the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Now, the day of the Lord, of course, is the beginning of the millennium, that 1,000-year period when Satan will be locked away and there will be a great teaching, not a second chance, but a chance for those persons who never had an opportunity to actually learn. And he is never, ever angry, and this pouring out of wrath is never for those persons who love him and who have bothered to learn the truth and know. And that's why it is important to study the Bible chapter by chapter and verse by verse and not skim over things. You can pick around in the Bible and prove that the world is square if you wish to do so. 7. Therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt. Well, now, whose heart would melt? We are going to be discussing those persons who, at the beginning of the millennium, discover that although they thought they were good Christians and churchgoers and psalm singers, had been taken in and had worshiped the false Christ, and then find out that he was the great fake. 8. And they shall be afraid. Pangs and sorrows shall take hold of him that travaileth. They shall be amazed one at another, and their faces shall be as flames. They'll be red-faced because they will be embarrassed that they have been taken in. And the woman travaileth there. This is the birth of a new age. At the beginning of the millennium, when Jesus' foot touches that mountain, all life goes into a glorified body. Well, you might say, well, how can I know that it's the Antichrist and not the true Christ that's sitting on the throne? Well, we've been told that he can bring down little sideshows. He'll be able to snap his finger and bring down some lightning. You will not see anyone healed. You will not see anyone brought back to life. And also we can think about, well, what does he look like? We've been told that Satan, God made him after the full pattern. He was a very handsome and charming and charismatic person. And how did the prophet describe Jesus? How he would look? Well, he was very ordinary looking, and you can rationalize and understand why God would not create the Messiah as an extremely good-looking, charismatic person, because we see those kinds of persons followed today for that very reason. They might be a preacher, evangelist, might be a politician. And Jesus, God did not want him to be followed because he was a charmer. He wanted him to be followed because of what he did, the miracles. And all those people, the throngs of people shoving and pushing to get up just to touch him, to beg for some healing, maybe hopeful for another fish sandwich like they got on that mountainside that day in that grassy place. And perhaps they just wanted to see, but they were not following Jesus because he could put on a sideshow. He never did. And he did not use charm and good looks to accomplish anything. 9. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh cruel, both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. Now he is only angry with those who are in wrongdoing, and he will clean the land. 10. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. And that is because Christ is the light of the world, and the very light that he provides will make the moon and stars and the constellations look dim. 11. And I will punish the world for their evil and the wicked for their iniquity, and I will cause the arrogance of the proud to cease, and I will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. They will have nothing to be haughty out. Now, the shaking and the false Christ is foretold in the New Testament in Mark 13, and I'm going to turn there, Mark 13, and pick it up in verse 14. But ye shall see the abomination of desolation. That's Satan. He's the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not. Let him that readeth understand. But then let them that he be in Judea flee to the mountains. 15. And let him that is on the housetop not go down into the house, neither enter therein to take anything out of the house. Too late. No time to change clothes. 10. And let him that is in the field not turn back again for to take up his garment. 17. But woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. And that's during the days of the Antichrist, and sometimes this is erroneously taught that it would be terrible to be actually physically with child. This is not what this means. This is symbology. Remember that Christ is the husband, the bridegroom, and the churches and the Christians are the bride. And this is the bride taken up with the false husband, such that she is with child and giving suck. She's just right in there with him and helping to nurse along his fake teaching. 18. And pray that your flight be not in the winter. Well, when is harvest? When our harvesting is done in the fall, not in the winter. 19. For in those days shall be affliction such as was not from the beginning of the creation which God created until this time, neither shall be. Now this is erroneously taught as, oh dear, it's going to be a terrible time. We'll have to be afraid. We'll have to be flown away. Remember that the gospel armor has nothing covering the backside. We have been told that we can stand against Satan. The affliction is that he has, with his charm and his little tricky sideshows, will be able to convince almost the entire world that he is the actual Jesus, and that is the affliction. And never, ever before have, or ever again after, will such falling away happen. 20. And except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved, but for the elect's sake, whom he had chosen, he hath shortened the days. The original prediction was for 2.5 years, and we are told in Revelation 9, if you wish to take that as a side study, that it has been shortened to 5 months to preserve the very elect, because this person, this supernatural being, Satan, is going to be so persuasive and so charming that even the elect couldn't hold out for 2.5 years. 21. And then, if any man shall say to you, Lo, here is Christ, lo, here is there, believe him not, because it's the false Christ. 22. For false Christs, that should be false Christ, and false prophets shall rise and shall show signs and wonders. Yeah, he can pull down lightning, and he can do little magic tricks and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. Now, 23. Behold, I have foretold you all things, everything. And that is why it's important to study this word, because we need to know how the future will play out, and we are told exactly. And I will punish the world for their evil and the wicked for their iniquity, and I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. And that is, we covered that, and that has to do with the people who have followed the false Christ. 12. And I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. And that gold of Ophir was the very purest gold in the entire world. 13. Therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. It's going to be a shaking, and as I said, God is never angry at those who love him and those who are following him. And this shaking is spoken of by Paul in Hebrews 12, and I'm picking it up in verse 23. To the general assembly and church of the firstborn, which are witnesses in heaven, and to God the judge of all, and to the spirits of just men made perfect, matured, that's the elect. 24. And to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaketh better things than that of Abel. Remember how in Genesis 4 that the blood of Abel brought out. 25. See that you refuse not him that speaketh, for if they escape not who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall not we escape if we turn away from him that speaketh from heaven. And that's Jesus. And he's saying, there were people that refused him when he was here, and indeed they did. 26. Whose voice then shook the earth? Why, it was Satan's voice in that first rebellion. But now he hath promised, saying, Yet once more I shake for the earth only, but also the heaven. And this is God. He's going to shake up everything. And this is the time of judgment. 27. And this word once more, signifying the removing of those things that are shaken, as of things which are made, that these things which cannot be shaken may remain. Shake out what is wrong. As a side study, you might look at Psalm 102. To end the Hebrews chapter, wherefore we, receiving a kingdom which cannot be moved, let us have grace whereby we may serve God acceptably and with reverence and godly fear. And he quotes Deuteronomy 4:24, for God is a consuming fire. He consumes that which is bad and that which is wrong. But remember that the Holy Spirit is symbolized as a flame, and that's not a burning flame. That is a comforting and warming flame. 14. And it shall be as the chaste roe and as a sheep that no man taketh up, they shall every man turn to his own people and flee every one into his own land. The confusion is over. 15. Every one that is found shall be thrust through, and every one that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. And that is spiritually speaking. 16. Their children also shall be dashed and shall be spoiled, and their wives ravished. And this is spiritually by Satan, is how he take children, convince their children, get their wives. Remember that in the Gospels we are told that mother will turn on mother and daughter on mother and brother on sister, and this is what this verse is talking about. It is during the time when Satan is in his reign that someone would go and say, oh, you must help Mama. She thinks that you're Satan. She doesn't believe that you are Jesus. And that's the meaning of that verse. 17. Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight. And that, of course, is Persia, which is modern-day Iran. 18. Their bows shall dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eye shall not spare the children, and they will not. Mark 13, we talked about that the daughter will betray the mother, and so forth. 19. And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees, excellency, shall go as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, and he burnt those places to base down. 20. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it dwell in from generation to generation, neither shall the Arabian pitch his tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. Everything will be in a spiritual body, and all of the confusion is gone. And this is what spiritually and symbolically, Babylon will be like. But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. Demonic kinds of things. 22 to conclude this chapter. And the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant places. And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. In other words, Isaiah is telling us that confusion will be over, and that's God's warning to Babylon and to anyone who would wish to participate. Book of Isaiah, chapter 13. This video has been an outreach of the Essex United Methodist Church in Essex, Missouri.